In 2024, Malachi Nathaniel Aaron Smith, a 33-year-old man from Cambridgeshire, was jailed for 6.5 years following his conviction for a non-recent rape in Portsmouth. Malachi Nathaniel Aaron Smith, of Humbrils Close, Huntingdon, was sentenced at Portsmouth Crown Court on Wednesday, 6 March 2024, after a jury unanimously found him guilty of raping a 16-year-old girl. The court heard that the offence took place at an address in Portsmouth in late 2009, when Smith was in his late teens. Smith had previously pleaded not guilty at a hearing in August 2023 before standing trial. In sentencing, the judge noted Smith's age at the time of the offence but emphasized the severe, lasting psychological harm inflicted on the victim over the subsequent 14 years. The victim required daily medication and experienced ongoing flashbacks and nightmares as a result of the assault. Smith was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison immediately following the jury's verdict. In addition to his custodial sentence, Smith was ordered to sign the sex offenders register for life. He remains subject to statutory public protection notification requirements and monitoring by law enforcement upon any eventual release. In 2026, Damien Gray, a 43-year-old man from Malvern, appeared at Worcester Crown Court facing charges of inciting a child into sexual activity, sending sexual communications to a child, and possessing extreme pornography. Damien Gray, of Burrows Close, Malvern, was investigated by West Mercia Police following allegations that he targeted a 13-year-old girl between July and August 2025. The prosecution reported at Worcester Crown Court that Gray engaged in sexualized communications and attempted to incite the child into sexual activity. Additionally, Gray was charged with possessing extreme pornographic material, specifically 11 still images and one video depicting explicit acts with a dog, dating between 2023 and 2025. The case was sent to Worcester Crown Court for plea and trial preparation. As of April 2026, Gray was placed on high-risk bail supervision, subject to strict conditions, including a prohibition on unsupervised contact with any child under the age of 18, pending the outcome of the judicial proceedings. Gray remains subject to active court orders and bail conditions monitored by West Mercia Police. If convicted of the sexual offences involving a child, he will face mandatory inclusion on the sex offenders register and statutory public protection monitoring frameworks. Image credit: Eric Woods. In 2021, Liam James Puncher, a 23-year-old man from Dorchester, was jailed for 6.5 years after being found guilty of raping a woman at her home. Liam James Puncher, of Dorchester, was sentenced at Bournemouth Crown Court after a jury convicted him of rape following a trial. The court heard that on the night of the 22nd of February 2019, Puncher was watching a film with a woman known to him at her home on Portland. When Puncher began making unwanted sexual advances, the victim explicitly instructed him to stop. In the early hours of the 23rd of February, Puncher grabbed the woman by the throat and raped her before leaving the property and texting her to apologize and ask her not to inform anyone. Puncher reported himself to police on the 24th of February 2019, claiming he wanted to hand himself in, but during subsequent interviews, he falsely asserted that the sexual activity was consensual. Detective Sergeant Joe Blackmore commended the victim for her bravery throughout the court process and investigation, noting that the jury rightly rejected Puncher's false claims. The judge sentenced Puncher to 6.5 years in prison for the violent attack. Following his conviction for rape, Puncher was placed on the sex offenders register for life. He also remains subject to statutory public protection notification requirements and monitoring by law enforcement to manage ongoing risks upon any eventual release. In 2026, Ethan Orchard, a 30-year-old man from Southsea, was jailed for 3 years and 4 months after sharing doctored intimate images of women he knew and posting explicit abuse fantasies online. Ethan Orchard, of Highland Road, Southsea, appeared in court for sentencing after pleading guilty to 3 counts of sharing a photograph of a person in an intimate state for sexual gratification and 1 count of encouraging the commission of an either-way offence. The court heard that Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary launched an investigation in January 2024 after a victim reported that over 100 images from her wedding day had been digitally altered to depict her nude or in lingerie and posted to a website. Orchard, who knew the victims, accompanied the uploaded images with graphic sexual and violent written fantasies and encouraged online users to harass one of the women. Officer liaisons between Hampshire Police and American law enforcement, including the FBI and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, revealed that the domain Orchard used was linked to an international network trading child sexual abuse material. U.S. authorities subsequently seized over 1.1 million indecent images of children and identified dozens of victims globally. On the 10th of July 2026, Orchard received a custodial term of 3 years and 4 months for his offenses against the 3 women in Hampshire. In addition to his prison sentence, Orchard was made subject to a 10-year Sexual Harm Prevention Order, SHPO. He was also handed an indefinite restraining order prohibiting any contact with the victims to ensure ongoing public protection and risk management. In 2026, Adam Daley, a 33-year-old Uber driver, was jailed for 16 years at Leicester Crown Court after raping a female passenger at knife point and possessing indecent images of children. Daley was convicted following a jury trial of rape, sexual assault, possession of a bladed article, and threats to kill. The court heard that on the 29th of December 2025, Daley picked up a female passenger in her 20s before making unwanted sexualized comments and pulling over into a lay-by under the pretense of using the toilet. He then forced the victim into the front of the vehicle and threatened her with a knife to perform oral sex on him. Following the victim's immediate report to Leicestershire Police, officers tracked Daley's vehicle using ANPR and CCTV networks. They arrested him within an hour of the incident, during which Daley attempted to destroy his mobile phone by stamping on it. In addition to the physical assault charges, Daley pleaded guilty to 2 counts of making indecent images of children after digital forensic teams recovered illicit material from his device. Former proceedings in April 2026 also saw Daley convicted for drug driving after testing positive for cocaine. On the 10th of July 2026, the judge handed down a 16-year custodial term for the violent and sexual offenses. In addition to his 16-year prison sentence, Daley was placed on the sex offenders register for life. He was also made subject to an indefinite Sexual Harm Prevention Order, SHPO, and a lifetime restraining order prohibiting any contact with the victim to ensure ongoing public protection and risk management. In 2016, William Loveridge, a 45-year-old repeat sex offender from Pershore, was jailed for 5 years after admitting to a series of sexual assaults against 3 young girls. William Loveridge, of Pershore, appeared at Hereford Crown Court, where he pleaded guilty on the first day of his trial to 3 counts of sexual assault against a female aged under 16 and 2 counts of sexual assault against a child aged under 13. The court heard that the offences occurred in Pershore against 3 girls aged between 11 and 15 years old. Loveridge had initially denied the allegations during the pre-trial proceedings before changing his plea. The court heard that Loveridge had a previous conviction for a sexual assault against another child dating back 2 decades. Taking into account his history and the nature of the offences against the 3 victims, the judge sentenced Loveridge to a total of 5 years in prison. In addition to his 5-year custodial sentence, Loveridge was placed on the sex offenders register for life. He remains subject to statutory notification requirements and public protection monitoring under multi-agency public protection arrangements, MAPA, following his release.